Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. Lovely to have you with me today. And today we're beginning the course of 6 sessions. And the first session we're going to explore, recap on tone, on monochromatic painting. I've got a photograph of some beautiful trees around the Dovestone Reservoir, not very far from me. And because we're working in tone, I printed a black and white version as well. I haven't given you a black and white version because often we see things in color. Obviously, naturally, we see things in color. We paint from usually colored photograph. But converting it in black and white photograph help us to see what's actually darker, what's lighter, and how do we deal with it, okay? So that's what I'd like to focus on today. And because we only have minimal, well, we haven't got any color, we only got tone, we've got minimal number of paints to manipulate with. We can also focus on composition and we can also focus on texture, okay? And again, having black and white tasks for today makes things a little bit easier to work then. So what I'd like us to do, I'd like us to have a plan of possible 2 compositions. I've got one a bit more elongated. You might just about see my pencil lines. You can just watch me doing that, or if you've got some spare board paper, you can paint along. So I've got one shape a little bit longer and one shape not quite a square but a bit more wider type of higher type of rectangle, okay? Although my final picture I do want to have it a bit more of a longer composition, but if I do prefer the other version I can always change the size of it and paint, perhaps maybe trim it afterwards. So before I get started painting, even my little samples, I'm just going to jot a couple of boxes, thumbnail designs for my compositions. So I've got my elongated version here. Okay, so only small. Again, you can just watch me or you can sketch along with me if you've got some spare paper. And here is my slightly wider, taller, shall I say, version here as well. Okay, so if I were to look for what's the, how much light, medium, and dark tones are there in the picture, and if I were to plan as an overall shape, what would be my lightest tones? So I can see the sky is probably will be just an off-white, almost white looking shape. So I can plan it straight away, looking for the edges of some of these peaks, okay, and work into some sort of shape across. I can even work straight away into my another section here and plan it out as well. I think I can go a little bit more. I'm thinking of perhaps trimming it here. I'll trim it about here. Okay, I think maybe this version will be a nice one. So if I'll put a little mark for myself as an option for second composition. Okay, so that might be something here, and then that peak is coming up there. Okay, so then my sky will remain white. There are loads of medium darknesses in between grays, lighter grays, medium grays, slightly darker grays. What will be the most darker tones? Now, I think how my picture's printed off, and actually, if I were to look at my color version, something my printer has done here, adjusted itself a little bit. I can see that my pine trees are the most dark tones, okay? And they are, if we were to squint our eyes, they are staying even here the most dark tones. Probably that shadow looks quite dark as well. Okay, maybe that's rock. But everything else, as grasses and at the front, become medium tones. So I'm going to focus as my most dark tones on these trees, the rock, and perhaps the shadow here. Maybe even that tree, but I think maybe that middle ground of the darkness looks quite nice. So all I need to do is to find that line they are standing on, okay, and find the approximate silhouettes somewhere here as a big block of shapes. Okay, and it's expanding a bit more here, and perhaps this shadow, possibly part of this tree, will remain dark as well. Okay. Everything else, from the hills to the foreground of the grasses, could stay much paler, yeah, or kind of into that medium darkness. So if I were to make my plan of overall 3 tones, one will remain white, one will become medium, and one will become very dark. Okay, very simple, basic differentiation of darknesses here. They're never just like that in real life, but we can subdivide them later. So for my other composition, I can see that this shape could come up a bit more higher, and then my trees will be somewhere here perhaps. I already got my gloves on, but don't really need them yet. Okay, I was ready to get started painting straight away. Okay, and perhaps that shadow somewhere here as well. Okay, so very, very basic. Okay. And we can start subdividing it afterwards, or maybe on our pictures. So what I'd like to do with my oils, I'm going to plan these 2 compositions, but I'm going to subdivide my light perhaps into 3 sublight tones, subdivide my medium darkness into 3, and subdivide my most dark tone, yeah, into 3. And I'm going to mix those colors here, and we're going to start planning that. So I'm going to start with some tips, because this is just a small design. I just want to have a quick blocking of colors rather than work with kind of viscosity of the oil paints. So let's start with a pure white. Now my sky is going to remain as a block, just a big shape of light. Just gonna mix my paint with my tips, so I've got that consistency of paint here, and I'm going to paint my sky straight away white. Now, because the paint is not overly solid, I probably will see a little bit of my gray, and that will compensate for not making it super white, but possibly I can top it up lighter after. Okay, so somewhere there, my sky, and I'm gonna make this one just a slightly different composition here. Okay, because I already sketched it here, I can go more or less for the shape Okay, if needed, I can tweak it. But this is a small design, thinking about overall darknesses in our picture. Okay, somewhere there. Good. So my fresh white, if I'll make a super, super, super solid white, is going to be here. So this is super thick. There's no gray coming through here. I can see a little bit of gray coming through my skies. Okay. So if I were to have a little bit lighter version, maybe still a little bit more of my white, but not as solid. Okay. I can use tiny bit of black to make my white less fresh white, but because I have got that gray board, it's coming through and I'm seeing the white less fresh. Okay, but nothing wrong would have been for me just mixing the white with a bit of black. Okay, so perhaps those are my three lighter tones. This is what I was talking about. Okay, now I already have my medium grays over here, okay, from priming the board. So I can focus now on my dark tone. Okay, so I'm going to pick up a different brush, maybe a little bit smaller. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of terps on, like I've done with the white, and dilute my black so it's not overly solid, but when I start painting over it, I can see a little bit of gray through. Okay, so this might be even paler gray, or maybe I will use a little bit of white there after, and this is going to be my solid black. Okay, if I can actually get some solid black on. Okay, you can't quite see much difference, so I might add a hint of white with my black so it stays slightly opaque. Okay, might see that as a different, no, still can't see it on the screen. I can see it on my board, but the screen doesn't actually show. That's about right there. Tiny bit paler. And that other one will have to go slightly lighter again. Okay. Okay, something is happening now. I think it's also a little bit reflecting on the screen on top of everything else. Okay, so I've got three different darks and three different lights. Okay, so for my dark shapes on my compositions here, I'm gonna just use one of these lighter darks because you can always make it super, super dark. And we don't want to overdo the blacks first, okay? So let's go for this paler, lighter version of my darks. And let's find where these trees are going to be as a big shape. Okay, perhaps I were to draw that line a little to give me some guidance. Okay, I'm not interested in the tree's texture yet. I just want to place them approximately there. Okay, and then the other group. Okay, and there's a rock here as well. This is descending. Okay, and quite a nice dark shadow here. Okay, balancing it out. And I'm planning to make this tree already. So if it's not quite in the dark, it could be just on the borderline. So I might just add a hint more white with my black. Maybe just a little hint more. And that will become my larger tree here. Okay, something happening there. Good. Right, this is going to be the border of my picture. Right, so let's do something similar on the lower picture, planning my darks. Okay, so this time I can see more of this line coming here. Okay, and these trees are right on the edge. Maybe my sky line. So that's fine. No, that's all good. And then again, that lovely rock here. And a shadow of the tree. As I'm slightly zoomed in into the picture, things are slightly changing here. Again, that tree on the right-hand side will go slightly lighter. So I'm thinking of big shapes first. Okay, good. Okay. Now, we've got an overall light, we've got an overall dark, we've got an overall medium tone. Now we can slowly subdivide it. Now I'm going to subdivide it in the most, again, simple way, a little bit oversimplified in comparison to our painting because it's a small scale, and that's my opportunity to think in big shapes. So for my white, I can go for direct white. So perhaps if I were somewhere here, I can start using some of the fresh white. So on my photograph, well, both pictures, you can't see much difference. I think you can see tiny bit more darker sky somewhere here on the left, maybe some more lighter tones somewhere here. So I can improvise. I can make it perhaps stronger white somewhere here in the center. I can blend it with my existing off-white paint, and perhaps just keep it a little bit free to explore where that white could go. Just about enough, yeah. Right, what about this one? You can see things a little bit closer. I quite like, you know what, that mountain could actually be moved a little bit more closer here. So I'm not sure how I've done it a little bit different before, but doesn't matter. Right, so my then white could come on the border. Where is it? That will offset the shape of that hill, that mountain. I think they're more hills. Border of the Peak District. Okay. So that's will be quite nice. And again, it just softly disappears into the off-white color. Okay. Right. Now, can we work with our blacks? So again, I'll put my white brush down. I'm going to pick up my black brush and I'm going to go for solid black. Okay. And let's have a look. We can see a little bit more solid black on the tree here. Doesn't matter if I don't get the right shape yet. I'm more interested in just have a little bit more variety. Now on the screen, you can just about see it, but maybe not. Oops. not quite perfectly as I see it. I can definitely see a big change there. Let me see if I can tweak my camera for a moment. Right, so we can just see that just enough. Just that's better, even better. Right, so I'm carrying with my black, and this tree is looking darker, yeah. So I'm just doing a little variation. Maybe part of the rock here will have a bit more extra darkness. Maybe part of the tree trunk somewhere here, or lower shadow. Yeah, maybe not as much. Sorry, my tree trunk doesn't look overly impressive, but it might be just enough details for now. Okay, and the same we can do for the lower composition. Let's bring more solid paint. And if I don't see it as much differentiation here, maybe I need to go paler gray, so then I show my darks in a different way. Maybe my paint was a little bit darker than needed, so I'll do it the other way around, paint what's need to be just slightly lighter. Okay. As long as we achieve that variety within our tones. Now it looks like I'm more doing dark, most dark black, and it's lighter version of the darks. Okay, I haven't done anything with my grays yet. It's more dark here, and I can put more solid black. I think that's looks a bit better. They're only little strokes just to see that small variety of things. Perhaps something's gonna come here as well. Okay. And that line is not going to be a line. It's going to start having all sorts of shapes as well. Good. And what we haven't done anything of the gray. Now I'm going to keep my background gray as it is, and I'm going to make something. I'll actually outline it like this. And I can make something lighter, and I can make something darker from it. Okay. So if I'll go get another tissue, so I can wipe my brush a bit more, taking some thick paint off. Okay, tiny bit of tips. So let's see if this will become my lighter or darker tone. Okay, a little bit lighter, so tiny bit more white. Okay, I can just about see that change, but is it about, I think it's just on the border, slightly different than that light. Yeah. And can I make a slightly darker version of it as well? Okay, that looks too dark. So very, very small change. Okay, almost there. Okay, here we go. So I have my 3 lighter tones, 3 medium tones, 3 darker tones. I'll cover that border. And then it will look a bit better as well. Okay. No, that's I made it the same as my gray. Okay, that's better. Good. So now I can subdivide my grays on my designs. So now I can start looking, okay, these grasses are quite light. The mountains at the back, part of them are slightly darker, part of them are quite light, okay? So some of them I can keep perhaps as they are. The others I can make slightly darker. Okay, sorry, slightly lighter. So I'll start using or slightly lighter version or slightly darker version just to make that variety happening. Let's start with a slightly lighter one, as I already have it here. Okay, so perhaps quite like the idea of having the hills darker next to my sky. Okay, tiny bit more lighter. But lower part here, close to the trees, could have a lighter tone. Okay, so we've got a gentle glow. Maybe there is more lighter grasses there. Maybe there's a bit of light. Maybe there is something else exciting there. Here's quite a small area, so perhaps just a little dab of that light will be enough. Okay. So let's do something similar here. By me smudging here already, moving my hill earlier on, I think it's more or less done it anyway. Okay. Good, but maybe I could make that hill slightly darker, as not quite the border, but higher part of it. Okay, we can see that better now as well. So there is a depth to that hill. It's not huge depth, but there is a little depth to show the variety of tones, to show that space and the distance away from it. Okay. And now let's have a look at the foreground. So again, the lighter version of the grays. Perhaps we'll have some of the, okay, I started from the lower picture. Let's come back to this composition. Okay, something is going to be here. Looking at the whole shape of those lighter grasses, they're dry grasses. Okay. And I can see also this stone rock lined close to us. Okay, so that might be a nice feature entering composition. Okay, so let's have a look at the similar approach here as well. Okay, bit of shape, lighter shape coming in here. Okay, and that lighter rock, which could have a little more extra light as well afterwards. Okay. Right, and I love the paths here as well. It's slightly lighter, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep it as my medium darkness. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the border of the grasses next to the paths, slightly darker. So I'm going to go for that darker version of medium tone. I think I'm going to be running out of my white shortly. So let's check if that's looking slightly darker, just a little bit. Not huge amount of darkness, but a little bit of that darkness. So lighter grasses are there. And this is going to be the border of my path. And all these grasses will start being slightly darker. Maybe I can tweak my shape of the stone here. Okay. And here maybe things will remain as they were as initial background color. And I can tweak how much of the path I can see. That will help me to tweak my shadow from under the tree, which I haven't drawn properly. I often prefer to find shapes rather than to draw things with a line. And finding shapes via tones is probably one of the easiest and more better option. Much better option. Okay, so my path is getting a little bit lost because it's just too oily here to make it too big. Okay, that's enough. There's a bit of suggestion in it. And let's do the same here. I'll probably pay a bit more attention to the accuracy of my paths for my actual painting. But here I'm trying to find that S shape a little more. That's it. And that from that border can make the grasses slightly darker. And how they stop. Isn't that perfect border, how they just stop being dark here. They just blend in with the other shapes. Okay. So from 3 tones, I could have even done it here on my paper. I could have done everything pale here. So my white as a sky, my as a shape of the sky, the gray is everything else, and the black is my trees. The black is staying with the trees. Yeah, so from 3 tones, I move to, if not all 9, almost towards the 9. Okay. Yeah, so from something like this, I move to a bit more that variety. And the plan is, when we actually paint, we'll keep subdividing it. Maybe we'll define where my fresh white is going to be and the other 2 subtones of the light. Maybe I'll find more accurate silhouettes or much more exciting places for them, or much more exciting contrast against the darks or something else. Or I might need to have more variety within each group. Okay. What I also need to mention is that when we paint in medium darknesses, sometimes it's not just a 3. Sometimes we need to dip into a little bit of light or dip into a little bit of dark. So maybe just kind of tiny bit of, maybe 20% is more fresher whites, 20% yeah, fresher darks, and everything in between could stay that in between, that medium darkness could dip in and out. So I could quite happily add a little more variety of light on top of some of my grasses or the rock, or I can increase more of the shadows, textures on some of the fields here as well. Okay. Right, so that will be our plan. And having this plan is quite important. And yeah, looking at my 2 compositions, I think both of them could work, but I do feel the elongated one will be more interesting and more exciting as a development. Right, and let's do another task. Let's explore some of the textures. Right, for next part, it's we're going to have some fun. I'm going to have a range of brushes, which I will have. I've got this big rough brush. I've got my brush I've already been painting with, and I'm going to pick up maybe another one, and maybe pick up a smaller brush, maybe something like this. Because what I'd like us to do next is to explore a little bit of texture. This is a soft brush, this is a bit more rougher brush there, but similar size, but they will behave differently. So what I'd like us to do is to use the remaining of our paper. I'm just going to wipe this one off and create a little bit of texture, a bit of dry brushing. Now, this brush has got a bit of paint still on. Just use tiny bit of tips, wiping it off. I'm interested in picking up some lovely textures we have on our pine trees and our grasses, on this tree on the right hand side. But before we do that, I just want to see what type of textures we can get from our brushes. Okay, if I'll just do a bit of dabbing. Okay, if I'll do a bit of dragging or scratching, what type of marks we're going to end up with. And different brushes, okay, maybe rolling it. Okay, it's quite nice. Now my paper probably absorbs a little bit of tips and give it some extra moisture and darkness. Okay, what about if I'll try my smaller brush? Just a little bit of paint. It's quite runny, it's quite okay, maybe a bit of similar, but can I use a bit more rubbing? That will be quite a nice build up. So if I'm painting, let's say, some of the smaller trees, that will be quite a nice texture for them, yeah, rather than painting them too precise. Okay, now we can use the black or we can use a little bit of gray for these exercises. Yeah, maybe a bit more paint, maybe a bit less paint. I'm looking for borders. It will give me, okay, maybe if I were to paint some of these lovely branches, yeah, how would I go for it? How would I paint my tree trunks? Okay, and then whispery branches. Okay, having a little bit of that exploration. And then I can add a bit more darkness, a bit of black to have the subtone to the shape. Okay, just seeing what a small brush can do and what other brushes could work out. Okay, this is quite nice. These are lovely strokes as well, bringing them quite dry. Usually in oils we have quite a lot of thick paint, so having something in between is wonderful as well. The same as if we were to put a little bit of moisture. I'm going to do it on my palette. If I put a little bit of tips here and then apply some soft paint, soft meaning, so the paint glides through that almost damp surface. That becomes quite nice. I only done it here because my palette not going to absorb as much water, tips as my paper. Okay, let's try. You know what? I'm gonna go for big brush straight away. And see how that will just do some dabbing. Oh, these are look how exciting that is. That would be maybe some of my grasses. Look at that lovely texture. I want it to be not perfect, but to have some sort of natural, not just painted solidly approach. Yeah, maybe this brush could just have less moisture, less tubes in it, and using its split bristles. Look at those lovely textures, yeah? There's wonderful qualities here. But I'm painting here on the white. My surface is going to be gray. So I'll need to make sure that it shows. Right, can I imitate some of the textures of the bigger tree? I think the big brush would be nice for that tree. That's lovely. Look at that. Got some beautiful subtones to it. Lovely softness at the same time. Volume is good. Okay. What about stone? Maybe some smaller, less, maybe more drags, less, smaller dabs for the stones area. Yeah, perhaps. If not all of the strokes will be used, maybe some of them could be applied earlier on like this before we use some thick paint as well. Okay. And slightly darker tone as well. So I really wanted to explore the possibilities of what our oils can do before we pick up any thicker solid paint, which we can always do here, yeah? This is something a bit of an extra. And as in watercolors, we start with everything light and then slowly increase our shadows. In oils, we start with things a little more transparent, a little bit more runnier. We can always apply thicker layers after. Okay, well, this is just lovely, playful experiments. And we can carry on working on a bigger scale and play with that texture more and more, finding what works for us. We can use a piece of card or a little wooden wedge. I think I've got a little wooden wedge here as well. Oops. Found one in my pot. Okay, so that's what comes with canvases. We can use little stretcher keys. Yeah, can we paint with a bit of that texture, maybe some tree trunks. I haven't got many branches, but maybe it will come handy moving about thicker paint as well. This is quite nice as sketching with it. Okay. But what behaves, how certain tools, brushes behave on the paper might be slightly different on our board, on a primed board or canvas. But similar principle, overall principle will apply. So mark making is done. Let's put two together. Let's have a look at our design of tones. Let's have a look at our texture and let's put a composition together. Right, so now we are getting started with our painting. Now picking up the grey board, well, priming my board today with grey, that medium darkness, does half of the job for us. If you primed it slightly lighter or slightly darker, it doesn't matter. It could be compensated in a different way. As long as identified approximately where it's going to be on your scale. If it's going to be more here or a little bit more here, we can just identify and keep the color you think it is as one of your base tones. So I'm going to start with, again, a little bit of turbs just to sketch my design, my composition. So a bit of runny gray paint. Let's see if I can actually see it. Yes, I can see it. So let's find my skyline first. What's going to be my lightest tone? Okay, so if this is my picture width, halfway through here, that little bend from the hills at the back is just about halfway through. So this is approximately my halfway through. Maybe not quite there, maybe a little further. Okay, so that little ridge and bend, it's approximately somewhere. Maybe I can just move it just a little bit more further towards the right. Okay, and that could be coming up. So on a larger scale, it's a bit easier to tweak those lines. I'm doing it approximately. I can still tweak it when we start painting, because I'm using a brush, so the line is wide. When I start using my paint, my strokes, so it will be a little bit easier. Okay, now let's find my shapes. If I divide my height of the photograph, where the trees are starting, a little bit less than a halfway through. So this is my halfway through. Maybe, right, where's my halfway through here? Give me that proportion. Okay, about somewhere here. Okay, it's coming reasonably close. Probably somewhere here. Again, halfway through the picture. It's still going slightly up, and then it's dropping down that little pointy part of the hill. So we are standing on top, and then there is a more of a drop to the valley, to the reservoir. Yeah, then it flattens out, and then it starts rising again. Okay, now let's have a look at my groups of trees. So the central group is approximately somewhere here. Okay, somewhere about here. So I can now group it up somewhere. Okay, maybe it just breaks that down a little towards right, and we can see two trees somewhere here as well. I already want to start turning it into a shape. I find it's much easier to sketch with a shape than with a line. So if I were to get started now, that's what I'm already planning. Okay, so my tree trunk somewhere here. And let's have a look on the right hand side. So we've got that lovely dark rock, some smaller trees. We're just seeing the tops of those pine trees. Okay, that darker rock is somewhere here. It might just dent some of that part of the hill with its darkness. And then we see this shadow off from the tree, leaning over, maybe groups of trees here. Okay. Where's the shadow? I'm going to leave the shadow out for a moment because I want to fit our path. Now, path goes by the rock. So I want to find its curvature, which was a little bit hard on a smaller picture. So it's starting somewhere there. It started to turn. Okay, and we might find a lovely curve for it. Don't have to exactly copy it as it's on a photograph. We can bring it over here. We can bring it, you know what? There's a little bit of another path journey somewhere here. Maybe I'll turn it that way as well. Maybe I turn it that way. Do I want a double twist? Let's have a look. And then that side could stay over. And then just disappears into this area. I think that might be quite nice. Do I want this one here? Maybe just want it. No, I don't like it. I like that. Okay, so on a larger scale, I can play with my layout, make those adjustments. I think I might change my mind and turn it that way back, but extend it a little bit more towards the left, this bend, extend the bend here. Okay, and that's good, stay somewhere here. Let's make my line a little bit darker so we can see it. Okay, and then we'll have a rock which will be covering some of that path. I'll put the rock right in the corner. Okay, just making its corners slightly more geometric so it doesn't look like a soft, fluffy cloud. It's sharp bordered, sharp silhouettes of edges, rock. Okay. Something there. Okay. And the paths also gives me the shape for the shadow from under the tree. I think that's what I was looking for, to kind of combine both because it's a darker grass here, and that's why it's that shadow stops, doesn't extend any further, or not, doesn't expand as much as. And then my lighter, darker grasses, I think it's drier grasses, what are lighter ones. Okay, something here, and then we can just play if it's partially another patch of the path. That might have a little suggestion of something here as well. And I'm finding those approximate shapes straight away. What's lighter, what's darker, and that's what I'll be doing in any of our future paintings, constantly thinking what's lighter, what's darker, how it's going to be coming together. Okay, so my sketch is ready. Now I can focus on my tones. Right, next one. I'm going to start with painting, but in comparison to my smaller designs, where I started with the light and then darks and then tweaked the grays. Now in oil painting, you can start with any approach. Painting lighter, painting darker, painting from medium to light and darker. Different versions, different people like different things. But for the use of our texture, if I want to use the texture, I'm going to start with my darker tones first, and then I can paint my whites and grays around them. So I have my big brush in my hand. So I'm going to go still for my turbs because I want a little bit of extra texture. I'm going to go for a bit of black. I'm going to go for one of these darker tones, not the super black, but one of the lighter or medium darkness of the tones, of the darker tones. Okay, and I want some texture. So it means that I need to have my tissue close by. So if I need to dry the brush a little bit, okay. So I'm going to apply, make my trees a little more, okay, playful from the texture. Right, maybe a little bit pale for my grays, but it means that I can use it, so for my darks, but I can use it for this tree. Okay, let's do that one. can press the brush on its bristles here so it goes really flat, and scribble it a bit, bring tiny bit more extra darker tone. So it actually does feel I'm painting more on a wet surface than on a dry one, but the texture could still come through in the most wonderful, playful way. Also with oil painting, which is good, we can wipe things off and start again. Might not be pure clear area, clean, but it will be enough to carry on and give another go if we wanted to. Okay, so maybe somewhere here first. Okay, I want to pick up my smaller brushes for the pine trees, a little more paler version of the darks. Now, can I pick up some texture and carry that, interpret that into the trees? A little bit of wet paint carries through nicely. This will have more solid, darker blacks after. But these trees, yeah, this is quite a nice little Christmas tree. Maybe another one. Okay. So that gorgeous texture is coming through. Okay, any other ones? Okay, maybe some other pointy start. Actually, the tops of the pine trees are a little bit more darker, so I can start darker here. If some of the branches are a little bit too wide, don't be too worried. By the time we paint some of our lighter tones and whites behind, we can correct it. We can make it a little bit more pointy. We can add more air. Okay, I think I want it a little bit lighter. Okay, something in between a dry brushing and having a little moisture. Okay, and now this tree. Again, let's see if we can pick up its shape at the same time, pick up some wonderful texture for those elegant branches. I'm not gonna do too much and too accurate. I will leave the room for things I can come back to. Okay, this come out beautifully soft and playful. Maybe I will use a hint of terps here. Okay. Tiny bit more again, paler, dark for the shadow. Okay, but there is a lighter tree in front of it as well. And to the base of our trees, let's have some more darkness, See if that tree trunk will come through. Quite like that you're painting a tree trunk with a wooden wedge. Okay, sometimes it scratches the paint, sometimes it applies the paint. Both could be very effective. Okay. Okay, good. Let's keep it at that for the moment. Becoming more alive. Let's work into this one. Again, I've got a darker tone for the tree trunk. There's a darker right-hand side of the tree. Top is dark. And then it goes slightly paler. And then it's quite dark here at the base as well. So let's find the paler tone by mixing it with small amount of white. And again, the branches here started to be slightly darker. And a tree trunk here could be scratched as well. Okay, and this could be partially softer as well. Okay, so I can preserve some of the gaps of my grays. That's how I find it's easier to do it that way rather than painting around. We can still add, again, for the future, we can add the little gaps with paint, putting little dabs, but by just kind of playing with that texture makes it wonderful. Something we can't do with thick paint. Right, I think I could do a little bit more work on my bigger tree. I quite like its shape. I'm really enjoying this small brush. I didn't think I'm going to use a lot of it, but I think it's doing a good job. And this wooden wedge for the tree trunks. Perhaps some of the suggestive branches. Okay, anything a little darker within that tree. The shadow will be more solid here. Everything else, I do like the overall kind of unity of the strokes we have done with a big brush. So a little some extra additions from a small brush, but okay, maybe a little borders. Okay. If you're struggling with texture with oils, ask yourself, why is my surface too wet from taupes or oils, or is my surface too dry? Have I got enough paint, or have I got too much paint? Okay, so it's maybe over saturated with thick paint. Finger painting is good as well. Okay, I'm happy with that. Right, any other textures? I think I'm going to go for some grasses, but this needs to be a little bit paler. And also perhaps I will reinforce it once some of when more thicker paint comes. Okay. That's my border. There's a little extra darker mark. I can lose it slightly so that border of the road no longer has to be so perfect. And this shadow as well. So elongated, a bit more elongated, stretched out marks of the grasses. Gets quite nice effect. Okay, good. Good, good, good. Anything extra dark for my trees? I might just add a little extra thicker paint for this corner. I do like the slender top here as well. Might keep it as it is as well. I can always add more. Okay, and I haven't done my darker rock here at the back. It kind of became more of a shape together with my pine trees, so I can just pick up a couple of darker shadows. I can look at my smaller sketch for those tips, just in case if we lose a little bit of track of where our darks are going to be. Yeah, so they're just about on the top of this tree, maybe a little bit of a shadow. Okay, something a bit more lower here on the right hand side of this group. Okay, maybe a little more on the side here. Okay, that is the rock there. Okay, and then this shadow. Okay. And a bit more perhaps of unity of darkness next to the rock here, and I'm ready to move on to the next step. So lovely and steady development. Okay. Right, and now I'm going to come back to my whites. And remember how I started here, where my white was slightly transparent so I can see some grays. I'm going to do the same. So I've got my clean white brush. I'll have a bit of oil or tubes or either. I'm going to make it lovely and transparent, but not too runny. Okay, so then I can, almost like what I was doing with my trees, rub this white paler, well, it's darker white because we see the gray over it, sorry, through it. Okay, so I might just block it as I've done on my thumbnail design, and then work with some fresher whites. Okay, so I'm just picking up some darks from the pine trees, so cleaning the brush a little bit. As well, let's find that exciting rise. Okay, maybe that angle. It's a bit more of a character. Block, block, block. Well, it's not super fresh white. Easier to go in between the branches. If they smudge too much into the sky, just need to wipe our brush and keep getting a cleaner white. Okay. Continuing with the silhouette, I want to make another little step. Maybe actually drop it down. Drop this one down first. Okay. Again, I'm controlling how much moisture I have on my brush, so it's not too runny. Okay, and I think I'm ready to start bringing some fresher white while I'm on this border. Well, I want to find that silhouette more defined. Okay, if you're trying to apply paint and doesn't stay, it means it's quite soft and oily in this area. So I tend to wipe the brush and bring thicker paint, encouraging it to stay in place. Okay, so this corner is there. A little more whites in between. Okay, now it is reflecting. Let me see if I can lift it up. Okay. Okay, better. You can see the white stronger now. Constantly checking that my white is fresh. Okay, because I am picking up more blacks from the surfaces elsewhere, so that's quite nice. Right, maybe I'll stretch this white to the top of the painting here. Then it goes paler into the darker version of my whites. Okay, and so it's here perhaps. Okay, just making sure it stays. Doesn't look like an outline around the trees. Possibly putting a little more white on this side. So there might be a bit of extra light there. Just doesn't look too similar. Just bold white around the trees and that's it. Just some more variety. Okay, that's quite nice. Some sort of glow going on. Okay. Might want to have a little. There's my wooded wedge gone. Oh, done. Right, and I just wanted to have that border a little more adjusted. That's it. Right. Any other paler shapes? So I think I'm going to go for something like these ones for my rock and for my grasses. I'll leave the hills as they are for the moment. So I can have a little bit of white on my brush, but because it's quite diluted and I can use that texture for the grass, yeah, leaving out my board, the color of the gray. Okay, the texture of those dry grasses. I'm painting them more or less in a similar darkness, but I can vary. I can add tiny bit more extra grays to it of a darker nature and of a lighter one as well. If you need to overlap any darker strokes, you might need a little bit thicker paint to kind of to encourage it happening. Okay, that's quite nice. So what I ended up with was almost like an outline of a shadow, but I will break it down so it doesn't look like an outline. It's more broken for me, but still, even though I will integrate it with other shapes, so it might have that kind of. There's no more width of that border here, and I might just come close to the path somewhere here. So it slightly changes the dynamics of that shape. The path itself has a little more light in between the rocks. So I might start it paler and then it will develop slightly darker. And then this rock can be slightly paler as well. Constantly compare it to the sky. Is it too light or is it just about right, or is it going to be too dark and compete with the grasses? Now the rock can be painted more solid, opaque darkness, but I think that's okay. Got a little texture on it. Mm-hmm. My path's got a little wider than I wanted. I can tweak that a bit. Good. So we've got some of our whites sorted, our lights sorted, and let's tweak our medium tones. Now, and for my grays, if I used more of a dry brush and more of a direct black and direct white, for the grays, I'm going to start mixing it more to have that subtle change of tone. So I'll use both white and black to create those grays. So let's start from my mountains. Well, I think I've turned my hills into mountains and making them a bit more dramatic. Now, we said we're going to make them slightly lighter, lower. Now, I've got paler grasses here, so I need to make sure they don't clash. So maybe all my grasses here will go a little bit paler. Let's see if, or maybe this color, well, sorry, this tone will need to go slightly darker. Okay. Painting partially between my pine tree branches as well, establishing some of that shape. I think what I can do, I can deliberately make it lighter, slightly higher here, so then that depth doesn't clash my grasses and the distant light, but that light could be slightly higher. Maybe the sunshine is just catching the middle ground of the valley behind, and then I'm going to blend this light with existing gray. So while I've got this light color, can I add it elsewhere on a similar level? Yeah, somewhere here, anywhere else here. So now I'm painting with thicker paint, just leaving out a few silhouettes. Can tweak the size of these trees. Just going around the silhouettes mainly first, and then I'll tweak the overall feel for the light. Okay. This tree could have little gaps of light. Okay, and now let's move this color out and blend it with our existing medium gray. And we can create a little bit of texture within the terrain of the valley. A little bit of a lighter slopes and slightly darker ones. Yeah, just that little hint. Same here. There will be some light and darker heather and drier patches of the hills. Really careful not to, if you're running out of your pre-mixed gray, just really carefully mix back similar darkness. Don't go for super white and then just block everything too light and mix on a picture. Sometimes it just spoils too much paint and of an even mixture of not the right darkness can just overwhelm what we have. Okay, come in a nice slope here as well. Just toning down the line I had left from my sketch. If it still appears a bit dark, can just blend it a bit. And also, we don't want our mountain line to be solid. We want it appear and disappear, being soft and gentle. So I've got a bit more sharpness here. Can I just soften it a little more this side? So we want that playful light traveling in. Okay, any of this light traveling behind my trees. Okay, that's might be a little too pale. Okay, this is quite nice. And variations to it are endless. I can find a little more light in between. If I haven't left it, there are different ways of bringing it back. Yeah, by painting slightly lighter tone over. I do like that fresher, paler tone in this area. I think I need a bit more of it elsewhere. I think I'm going to bring it a little higher and a little higher on the valley slope. And this time my strokes are thicker and I keep turning them one way the other way, so they like mosaics, little blocks reflecting slightly differently, giving us a beautiful puzzle of light. This is quite nice as well. Softness. Unless it's gone too dark or too light now. Sometimes simplicity is better than overcomplicating things. So let's bring it back to a little more darker hillside. And let's clear this one as well. Tiny bit more darkness back. So very small changes of those tones. Having a good play at the same time, using the structure we pre-planned. And this tree could have a little paler branches here as well. Probably a younger pine tree at the front. And that sunlight. Okay. Good. I put a little more extra highlights on my grasses, so just exaggerating, just coming a little bit more into this area for the lights. Just tiny bit more, so I can then have some bigger scooping strokes at the front to finish things off. Okay, now what's this bit? Now I haven't quite spotted it as well. What was against the darker grey was quite good. Now I've got loads of paler colors around. It doesn't read as well. Okay. Blocking a bit more of that light. And I think I'll bring my darks here. I simplify the light and bring my blacks a little over it. I think this one's moved closer to the tree next to it, but I think it's working quite like that they're more together. You know what also happens now? My paint reflects differently, so it's all black here, but because the strokes come in different directions, some of them reflect as darker grays and some of them reflect as black. So unless I place them all in a similar way, they will not appear the same on the screen. When in actual painting, it's totally fine. So you might have to trust me on what's happening here. And it's all okay. Right, that's okay. Right, and let's tweak some of the grasses at the front. I'm going to start with the paths because that's the easiest one. Paths usually have uneven surfaces, how they get worn out a bit more. So I'm just going to drag a slightly darker grey to the color of the path, or sometimes I have a little middle part to them. Sometimes it's a border, sometimes it's just something alongside. So I'm still preserving the actual color of my background, tweaking that entrance as it's coming from the back. That's nicer now as well. Okay, suggestive rocks. Where it comes, where it's traveled from. Okay, this tree could have a little more of a shadow. Okay, it doesn't look now overly natural shadow. Perhaps too dark. Okay, a little light here, that's it. And I'm gonna have a slightly darker corner for my rock in the corner. Okay, a bit more sharper, flatter strokes to show that ridge. I quite like. I invented another little low part here. So it looks very different texture to the rest of the surfaces, more natural organic ones. Just making it less perfect. Same as this ridge. Doesn't have to be super perfect. Sharp. Okay. And now let's finish with my larger brush. Some of the grays. Okay, it could be more watery oil. Watery, I mean more oily oil. More oily strokes of paler grays. Yes, so they're blacks, gently diluted with a lot of oil. They will dry as they are. Okay, coming close to my path, so I'm not over painting that area. Anything sharper. Do you see that bend? Okay, I think that's where some of scratching. And let's do more here. That's quite nice, those big shapes. And we could have scratched more into some of the bigger grasses just to create range of textures. But I think, you know what, my brush has done a lovely job, and I'm quite happy to keep things as they are. Just gonna overlook shapes, and there's always something we feel we can tweak. Just when do we stop, not overdo things, but also looking at our picture and in the next day will give us that fresh view, fresh look at everything. I think I might put tiny bit of something paler here, as well as there might be some individual smaller streaks. I think they're more moving darker paint than actually applying lighter tone. Perhaps that will show some longer grasses. Not quite long there, but it's come out as a lovely texture, and I just like to continue that impression. My path. Slightly paler. These are just very minor little tweaks. Maybe the stone will stand out gently, but I don't want the stone taking too much attention here. So maybe that contrast will be softened. And you know what I might do? I might make it even more suggestive and put some of the grasses over the stone. So then it's not too strongly showing. I think it started to take too much attention. Okay, that's better. Still something tiny bit more on the path. Paler. Hint of paler. Okay, good. Just don't want it to be all with pointy ends. That's all good. Yeah, I think I'm getting there. Yeah, the rock is no longer jumping at us. I will have to look at the picture as well when it's reflecting less. So perhaps a different scenario of different daylight. It's evening now, might have slightly different light conditions, and then it will give me a better idea of actually what's happening here, if everything okay here, or if anything need to be slightly tweaked. But I'm quite happy with the overall piece. We've used simplified tones. We had nice composition entering here, yeah. Got that lovely swirl kind of, sorry, um, Yeah, the swirl coming in. Yeah, taking us right in the center. And we've got some beautiful texture. So I hope you have enjoyed the session today. Hope you had a good play and continue playing. And I'll look forward seeing your paintings. Thank you very much.